Welcome to another episode of Full Build Friday, where I try to build a character from a comic, game, or similar source using the baseline rules of Pathfinder Second Edition and the Path Builder app. Hot on the heels of our dragon and slinking after our sleuth comes a build for a class that I am about bursting to tell you about. And helping in the efforts is the Hexplosives Expert himself, Ziggs from League of Legends. Before we completely descend into bomb-throwing anarchy, we must measure the wick and cut the fuse. Or, in other words, define some build goals. Akin to Shyvana, Ziggs is in a weird place in the narrative right now, with some conflicting backgrounds. What we do know is that he is a Yordle with a knack for invention, but has a single-minded focus on magically augmented explosives called Hexplosives. As a Yordle, he has an innate connection to magic, though his latest lore tied him to the polluted undercity of Zaun, which he fills with explosions alongside Jinx. Moving into mechanics, Ziggs is defined as a long-range artillery mage, and his passive is Short Fuse, which periodically empowers his next basic attack with some extra magic damage. That's it, just adds a little extra boom, a little extra spice on top of it. His bouncing bomb launches a large bomb in a target direction that, as the name suggests, bounces up to 2 times. It explodes upon contact with an enemy, terrain, or on its final bounce to deal damage in an area around it. Satchel Charge is a very versatile ability that Ziggs places at target location and detonates with a recast or after a short duration. On exploding, it deals damage and knocks back nearby enemies, but it can also send Ziggs flying as an escape option or execute low health turrets. It can also scatter smaller explosives with a Hexplosive Minefield, which slows and damages enemies that walk over them. His ultimate is then Mega Inferno Bomb, which he throws at an incredible range to deal massive damage, with more being dealt at its epicenter. This makes for a fairly straightforward character. Ziggs is a bomb-flinging madman from a race of magic spirit things, who has given up that lifestyle for the mess of a polluted undercity. In addition to his throwing of bombs, he sets explosives to demolish structures and hinder enemies from closing in on him. With the sincere hope that I won't get put on a watch list for the discussion on bombs, let's start cooking the build for this eruptive anarchist. I have no issue with human characters. I'm not one of those who only plays non-human characters or even one of those who only plays humans. I like having a mix. That being said, I do enjoy when I get to use an option other than human for one of these builds, due to just the sheer overusage of them for the Full Build Friday. That is all to say that I'm building Ziggs as a goblin. I've used a couple different ancestries to represent Yordles in the past, and will likely use others in the future, but this in particular is a great one for Ziggs. It starts him out with the Charhide heritage, which will give him some fire resistance after all the explosions that he's been through. And on that topic, the Goblin Ancestry also lets him grab Burn It, to enhance fire item and spell damage that he deals. This will actually be representative of his Short Fuse passive, though this extra damage simply occurs when he uses fire items rather than being on a cooldown. I'm usually relying on class or skill feats to cover abilities, so it's fun when I can manage to do so with a creature's ancestry feats instead. As for his background, there were a few options I looked at, which is often the case. Ultimately, I settled on Saboteur, which does establish that the character may destroy things for a personal enjoyment. And that fits Ziggs to a T. It also makes him trained in thievery and engineering lore, while giving him the Concealing Legerdemain skill feat. I'm not exactly sure that this fits Ziggs, or even the background as is described, but the rest of it works brilliantly and that's what matters here. With all this talk of bombs and explosives, it should come as no surprise that we are building Ziggs as a swashbuckler. No, sorry, I'm kidding of course. Ziggs is easily an alchemist, and is specifically a remastered alchemist. There's quite a bit to talk about here. Firstly is that alchemists no longer need to learn more advanced formulas. If you learn the base formula for an alchemical item, like a lesser alchemist's fire, then when you're of the appropriate level, you know the moderate, greater, and other versions of it, so on and so forth. Secondly, Alchemists now gain versatile vials. Normally these are explosives that deal some acid damage and regen during downtime, but different research fields will allow them to be altered in different ways. Research fields also give a ton more, and on that topic, Ziggs will very obviously be using the Bomber research field. This will allow him to change the damage type of his vials to cold, electricity, or fire, and also allows him to choose to deal splash damage only to his primary target when he hits them with a bomb. To fulfill his role as an artillery mage, he'll be taking the Far Lobber class feat to increase the range of his bombs, which also kind of represents his bouncing bomb, given that ability's range. There's a feat down the line that builds out of this that further plays into that concept. But before we get there, let's talk skills. Obviously, as an alchemist, Ziggs is trained in crafting, and will pick up training in acrobatics, arcana, athletics, intimidation, medicine, society, and stealth. He'll want an obvious focus on intelligence, which will increase the number of versatile vials that he gets, but he still needs dexterity to make his attacks with. He'll want to keep that up there, even if alchemists do, finally and deservedly, get up to master proficiency with their weapons. As for formulas, take Alchemist Fire, probably Junk Bomb, and another fire-based bomb, and then whatever else you want. The fact that formulas scale now is huge, and it puts a lot less import on learning formulas as you level up, especially when you can also do so during downtime while adventuring. Moving into second level, action compression is always important, which is why Ziggs takes up Quick Bomber as his class feat. It is important to keep in mind that dexterity is not his main stat, so I'd be careful throwing your limited bombs out there unless you're confident that you can land the hit. His skill feat, Crafter's Appraisal, plays into the magic that is often innate to Yordles, while also taking advantage of what will be his investment in crafting. This investment will become apparent by third level, when Ziggs takes a skill increase to his crafting skill. He'll take Toughness as his general feat, mainly for survivability, but Yordles are said to be surprisingly durable, and Ziggs specifically has survived quite a few explosions. He even does so in-game with his Satchel Charge. Speaking of satchel-shaped shells, at 4th level Ziggs can take up the handy-dandy Demolitionist Dedication. This demonstrates some amusing synergy with his background, increasing his engineering lore to expert, but more importantly grants the Set Explosives action. This grants him the ability to set up a bomb, or pair of them, that he can set a timer on. When they blow, the damage of the bombs is combined and ignores some of the structure's hardness, resembling the way that his Satchel Charge will execute turrets. For the skill feat here, I think the best option lies in snare crafting. This will allow him to build up snares like the Hampering Snare, which can create areas of difficult terrain to resemble the slowing effects of his Hexplosive Minefield. This isn't quite the best way to do so, nor will it be the last that we look at. It's just the earliest option that comes up. 5th level explores more of our Mighty Manic Midget's destructive tendencies, with the Vandal Ancestry feat, giving him a constant reduction against the hardness of structures, even when he doesn't take the time to set explosives. He's already trained in Thievery, so he will become trained in Occultism instead, while his actual skill increase causes him to become an expert in Arcana, playing into that innate mysticism of the Yordles. Ziggs also gains a field discovery as a bomber, which will allow him to use his intelligence modifier in place of the usual splash damage of his bomb, which, if I recall correctly, used to be a class feat for the pre-master alchemist. At 6th level, Ziggs gains his first additive feat, which have been simplified quite a bit. They no longer care about levels or anything like that, you can simply only have one additive per creation. We're starting him off with the Debilitating Bomb, which can inflict a variety of conditions, but most importantly for our uses, is the penalty to speed. Between the splash of a bomb and this effect, we have a fairly decent way of reproducing his minefield, though there is a slight flaw in that this has to come from a strike, not something he can just leave on the field. When it comes to his skill feat, Inventor feels like a solid fit here, both functionally, to help him gain new formulas, and flavorfully. Ziggs is the developer and creator of Hexplosives as a concept. For general feats here, we are mostly just looking at things that are generally useful, and Fleet is one of those, giving Ziggs just a bit more speed for those times when an enemy would be just out of reach otherwise. Naturally, with his skill increase, the first skill to get bolstered to master will be his crafting. While Far Lobber gives some of that range representative of the bouncing bomb, I think there is another way to go about it through directional bombs. It's worth noting that this specifically comes from his Demolitionist archetype, because we will need a second archetype down the line, and need to get the feats from this one first. But as for the actual effect of this feat, this lets you launch the splash of the bomb in a cone, allowing it to reach farther than it otherwise would, and resembling the reach of his bouncing bomb. We will then be sticking to magic-themed skill feats with magical crafting this time around, allowing Ziggs to make more mystical creations, which is something we'll expand on as we delve deeper into the design of this dangerous delinquent. Now, given Ziggs' association with Zon, Junk Tinker feels right at home as his 9th level ancestry feat. This lets him reduce the cost of building items, which does in turn reduce their resale value. But I'm not sure who is buying an already blown up bomb anyway. His skill increase is going to be a little different this time around. His archetype made him an expert in engineering lore, and his support cards in LOR seem to be some sort of excavation and demolition crew. So he will go the route of becoming a master in engineering lore. 10th level, if I am to be completely honest, is pretty basic. He takes Greater Debilitating Bomb to increase the effectiveness of his debilitations, most notably a higher penalty to speed, and then picks up Trick Magic Item. This is again based on the magic of Yordles, and will let him use wands or staves containing stuff like Fireball or other explosive spells, like Glyph of Warding. Moving along at a nice clip here, we come up to 11th level, which will grant Ziggs the Fast Recovery General feat. I've talked about this in the past, but where health regen is a stat inherent to League, I kinda like taking feats like this. Ziggs also becomes a Master in Arcana and then gets Advanced Vials, which will let him treat his vials as Adamantine, Cold Iron, or Dawn Silver, which will help with getting past resistances of certain creatures. Then, for 12th level, our Dean of Demolitions dares to dig into Expanded Splash, so that he can splash enemies within 10 feet of his primary target. An important aspect is that this comes from his Demolitionist dedication, which means that he can now take on a second dedication. Obviously, he won't be doing so yet, because the only other choice at this level here is a skill feat. I took Quick Jump for it, because its action compression is some of the best in the game, while also opening up the character to some additional maneuverability. Lucky level 13 grants the City Scavenger Ancestry feat, which is again inspired by his habitation of Zon. It also makes him an expert in athletics, to better use Quick Jump, as well as his greater field discovery. This would normally increase the splash radius of his bombs to 10 feet, but with Expanded Splash in our back pocket, they will instead splash 15 feet around the primary target, giving us a beautiful and bombastic bloom. As promised, at 14th level, Ziggs takes up a new dedication. Specifically, he grabs an Inventor dedication. As he does appear to be wearing some sort of blast armor, while not having a companion or wielding any sort of permanent item, he takes up an Armor Innovation, since he does have to. He then redundantly gains the Inventor feat, and becomes trained in Survival. So, overall, it might not seem great. However, there is a point to this. We just need to get a bit deeper into it. Until then, he'll take Rapid Affixture mostly just because it's another crafting skill feat, and because signature crafting isn't as good as it once was. It is a little difficult to figure out general feats for Ziggs, so I kind of just settled on my usual staples here, including Die Hard at 15th level for this fire-flinging fuzzball. Of course, his skill increase will go towards crafting to make him a living legend in this skill. Then, at 16th level, thanks to that Inventor dedication, Ziggs takes Basic Breakthrough. This in turn allows him to pick up Explosive Leap, which generates an explosion that launches Ziggs 30 feet. A perfect picture pantomime of the leap created by his Satchel Charge. Now this does have the unstable trait, so we can't use it every turn or every round, anything like that, but it is big in fully representing this effect. As to his skill feat, he'll follow up that legendary crafting with Craft Anything. Ziggs may have a single-minded focus on bombs, but I believe in the little dude, and I think he could expand his horizons. He just doesn't want to. For 17th level, Goblin again shines with perfectly named feats as he takes Reckless Abandon. This grants him some fantastic survivability, which I love for how it reflects his ability to survive his own explosions when experiments go awry. His next legendary proficiency goes to engineering lore, so that he can figure out where to place his bombs to get the most bang for his buck. Building out a far lobber at 18th level, Ziggs finally takes up Uncanny Bombs, which increases his range with his bombs up to 60 feet, and otherwise enhances his range attacks in regards to cover and concealment. This is great to show off his ability as an artillery mage, and just how far his bouncing bombs can go. Pivoting towards his skill feat, we're looking at Legendary Professional, because, like I said, he seems to be working with some other Yordles on a large project in Shurima in the Legends of Runeterra cards. Following on from there, Ziggs finally takes Featherstep at 19th level. Honestly, this may be one of those that you should take earlier. With his set explosives, Ziggs is sure to be leaving lots of rubble all around, and this could help him navigate that with a little bit more ease. One final skill increase from his class will then make him a legend in Arcana. With our final level up to 20th level, Ziggs takes up Mega Bomb, which is only a word away from his Mega Inferno Bomb. And fittingly, this is probably the best way to represent it. This takes 2 actions and changes it from an attack to a variable fireball that targets within have to make a save against. A failure means that the targets take not only the damage, but also the effect of the bomb's strike, which is great for throwing out a variety of effects. Speaking of which, by taking Unified Theory as his skill feat, he can now use Arcana to trick magic item for spells of any tradition. I do think Ziggs mostly wants arcane spells, but it's still nice as a just-in-case sort of option. Then, to round out this whole build, is another skill increase, thanks to his intelligence boost, which will be spent on nature to make him trained in it. Fuse is running low, but we have some time to talk free archetype. Switching things around a little, I would actually start with an Inventor dedication. This will let him take Brilliant Crafter and get that scaling crafting skill early on. He can wrap the dedication up fairly quick with Explode or Explosive Leap, and then move straight into his Demolitionist dedication. In addition to the feats I already suggested here, he can also make use of Controlled Blast and Collapse Wall, the latter of those being a very fun and unique option. With the extra Alchemist feats he'll have, I would grab more of the Debilitating Bomb feats and just general enhancement feats such as Efficient Alchemy and Alter Admixture. With that though, it's about time for me to blow up this popsicle stand. Though before I do, I suppose we should review what we've built. Ziggs the Hexplosives Expert is a Charhide Goblin Bomber Alchemist with a Saboteur background. These builds have explored a few options for Yordles in the past, but Goblin feels particularly right for Ziggs, while the more magical nature of his people is explored through his investment in Arcana and its skill feats such as Trick Magic Item and Unified Theory. His relation to Zon and love for destruction comes through with his City Scavenger, Chunk Tinker, and Vandal feats as well. More mechanically, he fights at as long a range as he can with Far Lobber and Uncanny Bombs, while his Ancestral Burnet can actually serve to reference his short fuse, and the increased damage that his attacks will sometimes gain. The aforementioned Uncanny Bombs can reflect the range of his Bouncing Bomb, with the help of Expanded Splash and his own class feature covering the blast of it. The Cone of Directional Bombs could also play into it, expanding farther in a specific direction than his bomb otherwise would. The set explosives of his Demolitionist dedication is perfect for his Satchel Charge, and by dipping into Inventor and taking Explosive Leap, he can even recreate the dash that it lets him perform. He could lean into set explosives for his Hexplosive Minefield, but he can also use Snare Crafting and Debilitating Bomb with its slowing effect to more accurately recreate the movement reduction of this ability. Finally, and very fittingly, the Alchemist offers up Mega Bomb for Ziggs' Mega Inferno Bomb. This lets him deal full bomb damage to everybody in the area, and while it lacks the epicenter of the ability, I don't think Ziggs will mind that one bit. In summary, Ziggs uses his Bomber Research field to rain down explosions, and is comfortable in the Undercity of Zon with a number of his Goblin feats. His Demolitionist archetype enhances his ability in breaking down structures, and feats such as Debilitating Bombs slow enemies trying to engage on him. This ebullient expert on explosives engulfs the environment in endless eruptions, eagerly earning his eminent epithet. There's more builds to come, but let me know what you think of this one and what other sorts of builds you'd like to see. We do have our first remastered build settled. Get ready for Reinhardt coming out mid-September. Until then, you can check out other builds I've done, including his old one, over on the Monster Monday blog. We also have a Twitter and Discord, and all of those are linked in the description below. Thanks for watching, and have a fantastic Friday.